In this lecture, we'll configure the BillManagementLambda in our template.aml file and a few other things we need to configure for the first lambda as well to test it end to end. To do that, copy the first lambda function that we have already configured. Go to a new line, a start of the new line, paste it. Change this name from patient checkout function to bill management function. The code URI will remain the same. The handler, only the class name will change. Go to Eclipse, copy the bill management lambda class name, come back, paste it on patient checkout lambda right there. Handler is the function name. The runtime and memory size are common for both the lambdas. So you can move these two from here under globals. I am going to leave it as an assignment for you. So you can take out the repeating elements, runtime and memory size. You can move them under global properties. Go back here. We'll come back to policies once we finish the events. Here, we don't need this environment variable because we are simply handling the event that comes in. So get rid of the environment variable, and under events, we are handling SNS event in the bill management lambda. Change this from S3 to SNS. Instead of S3, simply change it to SNS event. Type is all capitals SNS. Under properties, we don't need the bucket name. Instead of the bucket name, we use the topic name. Topic reference to the topic which we have created as a resource earlier. Copy that topic resource name, come down, paste it right there. And we don't have to specify events like this. In case of S3, we'll have to filter out the events here. As soon as a message is received on the topic, automatically it will trigger this lambda function that is defined here. All that will happen magically. And under policies, you can take out the entire policies section for this second lambda function. We don't need any policies. Simply it is triggered by an SNS event and we handle the event, we process the event. But for the first lambda function, along with the S3 read policy, we also publish the message to SNS. So the first lambda function needs the publish access or permission. So we need to define another policy under policies of the patient checkout function. This is the last thing which we'll be adding here. Hyphen, define along with S3 policy, SNS policy, space SNS, all capital, P capital, publish, message, M capital, policy, colon, on the next line, couple of spaces right under S, give the topic name, T capital, topic, N capital name, colon, not, use the intrinsic function, get attribute, space, the patient checkout topic, which we have created up top here, refer to that, copy that, come down here. We want the name of the topic when it gets created. So under the policy definition, right here, get attribute of patient checkout topic dot topic name. So that is how we can get the actual name when the stack is created, when the topic is created. The dynamic name that gets generated can be accessed using get attribute intrinsic function and then the topic name. So in this lecture, you have configured the second lambda function that gets triggered when there is a message in SNS topic. Using the events, SNS event, type is SNS, and properties, you have referenced the topic that gets created. And also you have configured the policy for the first lambda so that it will be able to write to this topic. It can publish a message to this topic when it processes the data from S3.